Hello, my name is Im, and thank you for joining me today as I continue Season 4 Part 2, the final season of Shingeki. Though of course, it's not truly the final season because from the sounds of things, it appears that it's not going to adapt everything from the manga in these 12 episodes. 10 episodes after I'm done this episode, right? So yeah, you know, strong possibility of a film. Of course, there's pros and cons. Of course, if there is a film, the hype continues. The Shingeki hype doesn't die, right? There's probably another year or so of build-up and hype. But then on the flip side, it's also a bit of a curse because that's another year that anime-onlys have to, you know, somehow go spoiler-free. And as you know, as I mentioned in part 1, or sorry, in the last episode, it's not easy, right? It's nearly impossible. So, you know, I'm dreading that. So before I get into the episode, just a few things. Patreon, if you're interested in full length for this episode, or perhaps full opacity, consider checking out the Patreon page. And of course, there's lots of perks for some of the other series on the channel as well. If you're into social media or Twitter specifically, check out the link in the description. All the links are in the description and the pinned comment. You know, you can certainly support the channel by checking out the Twitter page and following the Twitter page, as it is a fantastic tool for a content creator to expand their reach. And if you do end up enjoying this, please consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments. And, you know, if you notice that your comments are disappearing or, you know, they've been deleted, just ask yourself, you know, did I spoil something? Did I allude to something? Did my profile picture have a spoiler, a frame, a screenshot from an episode I have not watched yet? Because those get deleted, you know, even if the comment itself is not a spoiler, you know, your profile pic could be a spoiler. So, you know, again, you know, no one's telling you to change it or anything, right? That's entirely up to you. But do know that if the profile picture does have a spoiler, and the spoiler is anything I have not seen yet, then, you know, that comment is going to be deleted. All right, folks, that's it for the intro. Let's jump into the episode, and I also hope to see you after the episode in the post-episode discussion. Let's jump into the episode. I hope you enjoy. He's kind of like Grisha back in Liberio. Gotta love that comedic timing. Yeah, yeah. Season 1. Oh, Mikasa. Goosebumps. Incredible new music. Armin's finally thinking it. Wow, this music, Yamamoto. Wow. Wow, yeah, Armin's finally thinking of that Stampede of the Titans. Oh. Whoa. Kind of reminds me of season 1, episode 7, the ending. Oh. Oh my god. He's here. Whoa. Eren looked quite surprised there. That's not common. The iconic Beast Titan theme.
よく一人で耐えたな、エレン。あとはお兄ちゃんに任せろ。
Oh. Wow. Now, folks, you know, there's no point of hiding it, obviously. You know, I've heard the first thing, the first lyric is rumbling. The dude's just shouting rumbling. So, of course, I've heard that, right? You know, that being said, of course, I think pretty much everyone knows, or, you know, at this point, it's pretty clear that some sort of rumbling is going to happen, right? The true question, the real question is if it's going to end up being a sampling, right? Or it's going to be the Stampede of the Titans. Look at that. Oh. Once again, classic music coming in. Heicho isn't around anymore, so facing the Beast Titan just became quite the daunting task. So Commander Smith, the charge. The parallels though, back in Shiganshina. Look at this, Flock leading a crew in Shiganshina. And the Beast Titan is launching projectiles. But at Marley this time. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. He's not gonna go. Iconic music. Nile. Huh. Oh. Marie and the kids. This is so sad, man. Really? Back down, rookie. Ah. Oh. Even now he's protecting the cadets. Oh, I gotta love Pixis, man. Even in this situation, he's got a sense of humor. Oh, oh Louise. Wow. Big moment. Louise might pick it up though. Oh. Oh, that transition though. Oh. The Agent of Chaos. Yelena. Look at this. Whoa. That build up though. Oh. Yeah, the build up to them coming out. Incredible. Whoa. Oh, Armin slipped up, didn't he? He slipped up. That's even more scarier. Her switch? Yeah. She knows. She sees through Armin's lies. Or his facade from episode 16. Jesus, look at the size of this thing. Who happens to be a damn good shot? Gabby. Oh. No, 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 no. He's taking... No, no, no. Yeah, Gabby, you gotta step in. This is it, this is the moment. Yes, Gabby.
子供が来る場所じゃない。家に帰るんだ。
ナイルさん、ありがとう。
Hero. Family man. He can't... Oh, beautiful moment. That rifle.
どうして敵を信じたんだ。
Whoa, look at this shot. I've seen this before in season 1. Oh, look at that. Yeah, Gabby. This is it. This is it. Proud of you, Gabby. Oh.
見たわけでもない人たちを一方的に悪魔だと決めつけて、ずっと同じことを繰り返してる。
It's still going to be tough for her now that she's accepted it. Ah, look at that. The symbolism. It's that portion from Tiber's play about Karl Fritz. Come on now, you didn't know. Young Gabby has set her mind free. Love the symbolism of the bird cages and the open gates. Go on, Falco. Niall, that conversation really paid off. Yeah. It's just like the season 2 finale, Mikasa and Armin. Not Armin, Eren. Ah, look at that. No, he's not cold. But just like Eren, Gabby jumped into action immediately. Beautiful scene, beautiful symbolism. Oh. Man, Galliard, he always takes a beating, man. Looks fantastic. No. No one. Ah, sneak attack. Though there's a lot of sneak attacks in this episode. As expected of Peak. Ooh. Oh. Ooh. Again, Eren looked quite surprised there. Look at this. It's similar to the smokescreen strategy, right? Oh, yet another season 2 finale callback. Oh my goodness. Oh. Shit. Right then, so that was quite the high stakes ending, right? A lot of dramatic and explosive setups. You know, it effectively built agonizing tension in the conclusion, or in the build-up to the conclusion of the episode. You know, the race against time is truly on at this point. And, you know, it's also grand in its nature, right? And the scale at this point, as expected, right? Given that it is nearing the end of the storyline. I thought this episode had some fantastic callbacks. The direction was top-notch. Incredible new music is introduced. Oh my goodness, I'll get into that. And of course, fantastic use of pre-existing music as well, right? In a lot of different moments of this episode. You know, I thought it was quite interesting that Eren only really moves a bit, you know, throughout the span of this episode. And by moving, I mean physically moving in terms of reaching Zeke, right? But, you know, every step is a colossal one. You know, pardon the pun, but every step is a colossal one and a monumental one at that, right? In the grand scheme of things, in the end game of this story, it is, oh my god, it's staggering, right? And I thought it was a great parallel to earlier in the series, in season 1 actually, as Eren was carrying that boulder towards the opening, right? And at that point in time, everyone was doing their part to make sure that he gets there. Now it's kind of like the opposite situation, right? You have a lot of people here that are stopping him, right? Or trying to stop him from getting there, right? From getting to the target. Now this episode certainly had a few great moments. But my favorite moment, or one of my favorite moments of this episode, was the buildup of Armin, Jean, Mikasa, and Connie entering the field. Oh, I just love that scene. You know, love the music selection there. I don't know the name, but I know the music, right? I know the music. It was the same one they used in the season 2 finale at one point, right? Now, you know, this episode certainly had its share of great moments, but one of my favorite moments of the episode, and you know, maybe even in general, was the build-up to Armin, Jean, Mikasa, and Connie entering the field, right? Love the music selection there. Again, I don't know the name, but I know the music. It was the same track used in season 2, right, at one point. Season 2 finale, to be more specific. It was around the time Historia's telling Ymir how she makes her feel, right? And it kicks off this incredible scene in the season 2 finale. Same music here. I thought it was just phenomenal music selection for that moment. And you know, I actually felt that that was an iconic moment of the series, them entering the field, right? The presentation certainly had that gravitas to it, didn't it? You know, there's that one shot from below, right? From the stairs looking up at them. It almost kind of felt like they're entering the new world at this point in time. Again, you know, it just felt so grand to me. And of course, you know, during the build-up, there is a moment, you know, where Mikasa makes the choice to discard the scarf, you know, the scarf that Eren gave her. I thought that was another major moment because essentially she is discarding her security blanket, right? For now, at least. And you know, I did get the feeling that maybe Luis might pick up the scarf and might give it to her at some point down the line, maybe. You know, I think it is one of the most symbolic gestures of the entire series for Mikasa. It's a massive moment. But then in comparison, another piece of fabric is discarded a bit later as Gabi rips off Falco's armband, right? But that discarded piece of fabric represents the closest connection Gabi and Falco have had at this point. Now, of course, I'll return to Gabi in a bit, right? Of course. You know, it's an important moment for that character arc, so there's a complete different section that I'm going to do for Gabi and, you know, some of the other things attached to that character arc. You know, a little bit earlier, I spoke of incredible new music, right? The new track that plays out over Armin and Mikasa's stair conversation, right? Armin's flashback to the beach and the transitions to the battlefield outside as Reiner contemplates, you know, just why Eren keeps going. That is some of the most emotionally moving and deeply affecting music I have ever heard, in any show or film. I am not being hyperbolic in the slightest. I mean it. You know, that was staggering, especially paired up with all of that specific imagery. It was just incredible. It had quite an effect on me. I mean, it had this mesmeric quality to it, right? A transportive quality even. Yamamoto has delivered one of the most poignant pieces of music I have heard in a long time. And I'd say one of the most poignant pieces of music in Shingeki, right? Of course. You know, it's hauntingly beautiful and it's so effective in framing just how incredibly sad this whole situation is, right? And the actions needed to kind of break this cycle. I mean, it's right up there. You know, I just heard it, but it's right up there as some of the most incredible music from Shingeki. And Shingeki is full of incredible music, right? I saw the return of many pre-existing favorites in this episode, right? And like I mentioned, used to perfection. Most of them, at least. And, man, you know, I spoke of, you know, the race against time being truly on. That final shot of Colt, Gabi, and Falco running towards Zeke. Oh, man, that has tragedy written all over it, doesn't it? You know, Zeke is not going to change anything at this stage, right? You know, Zeke is absolutely devoted to his cause. But that being said, I can see Zeke being upset about the situation, right? I can see him being receptive and sympathetic, right? As he himself is trying to reach his own brother as well, right? You know, it clearly introduces a high stakes, emotional speed bump of sorts, right? But ultimately, I do think he'll accept it as collateral damage at this point in time. You know, but of course, for Colt, it's the last resort, right? He has to try something, and this is his only choice, right? To reason with Zeke. You know, perhaps he feels that maybe he could convince Zeke, you know, given that they have spent time together before. But, you know, realistically speaking, Colt didn't really know Zeke at all, right? Colt knew a version of Zeke that he put out there, but he doesn't really know Zeke, does he? And, you know, I spoke of explosive setups. This is one of them, right? Them potentially being that close to Zeke as he finally screams, right? That is, wow. You know, Colt's going to be there. Gabby's going to be there. Of course, Falco's going to be there. I just don't know how much longer Zeke's going to hold out, you know, before he screams. You know, right now probably is the right time for him to scream, isn't it? So that, you know, set up that situation or potential situation certainly has me a bit uneasy, or the thought of it has me a bit uneasy, how that could play out. Yeah, let's see. But, you know, let me shift to Eren, right? Let me shift to Eren. I do want to focus on Eren a bit. You know, so much of last season showed us Eren's quest, carrying him through progressive complications, right? Until he exhausted all actions to achieve his desire, right? Found himself at the end of the line. You know, Eren's trek after he breaks out of his jail cell was iconic, right? And important for that reason. You know, it's a monumental scene because of the implications of it. And I remember saying, Eren cannot restore the balance of life by taking lesser actions at this point. So Isayama-san has taken Eren through progressions that exhaust one action after another, right? Until he reached his limit in that, you know, season 4, part 1. And at that point, he believes that he understands the world, right? And knows what he must do in a last effort, right? And how Eren chooses here is going to give us the most penetrating perspective of his deep character, right? The ultimate expression of his humanity. You know, building on that, let's go through Eren's strongest ideals, right? Freedom, the right to live because he was born in this world, right? He's certainly not a fan of oppression, right? So he's fighting for freedom, you know, for the people he cares about, and Paradis as a whole, right? And, you know, a lot of people have died for Eren, for him to get this far, you know, to keep this hope alive. That's one of the running themes of this series, you know, right from season 1. You know, think of the original Levi squad, you know, think of Commander Smith and the recruits. And that includes Flock because he made that charge, right? And he was fully ready to die. He happened to live, but, you know, he made the charge, right? He made that charge. You know, think of people like Ian from season 1, right? The list goes on. And I don't think for a second he would forget all the life that was sacrificed. You know, I believe that all that sacrifice does play a part, that it makes his crusade even more important. And, you know, I mentioned callbacks earlier in the opening of the post-episode portion. You know, there's another great one to, once again, the season 2 finale, right? Reiner reiterates in this episode that Eren is the one person who shouldn't have that power, right? Because Reiner knows Eren is willing to pay the price, right? He understands and does have remorse, right? As established through his conversations in Liberio, right? If you go back to episodes like The Door of Hope, right? His conversations with Falco, but more so, you know, for the audience to kind of get a inner look at his position at that moment in time. It was quite a definitive, you know, position, right? It was clear back then, you know, in The Door of Hope that Eren has he has an objective, he has a goal in mind, and he's gonna stay on that path, right? You know, he's absolutely committed to moving forward, right? Reiner knows of Eren's convictions, right? That he is ready to pay the toll, essentially, So yeah, I thought it was a great callback to the season 2 finale as well. So, Zeke's plan is so far removed from Eren's beliefs and ideals, and Armin knows this, right? Armin knows this. It is an absolutely outrageous thought to even entertain that idea, that Eren could be for Zeke's euthanization plan, right? He saw through that table talk. Armin saw through that, right? He knows. He understands that Eren is trying to create distance between them, right? Armin understood that Eren's intention was to protect them by hurting them, right? And alienating them, right? He's trying to create distance. So, last episode I mentioned that Armin's judgment was spot on about Eren, right? But a portion of it at least. That yes, he is just playing along so they can convince Zeke and Yelena that he is an ally, right? To ultimately make contact and then use a sampling of the rumbling to protect the island, right? And that no one's going to touch the island for 50 years from that point on. Now, at this point in time in the series, in the story, it's pretty clear that some form of the rumbling is going to happen, right? In the near future. Right? It's getting to that point now. And pretty much every character that knows this information expects it to be a sampling of the stampede, right? To show the rumbling's might to the world. But this episode, Armin actually starts exploring the possibility of Eren having a different type of stampede of the Titans in mind, right? The type that will make everyone tremble at the footsteps of doom, as Willie Tybur put it, right? In the Declaration of War. In part 1. And of course, this came about on the stairs, that incredible scene, as I mentioned earlier, as Mikasa asked him, why did Eren push them out? Why did he say he hates me, right? Now, again, it is Armin. It is possible that he might have actually thought of that possibility, right? But, given the nature of it, given the staggering nature of it, he might have internalized that thought, right? Didn't really want to think about that possibility. And if that was the case, these questions from Mikasa brought up that faint but unsettling thought back to the forefront for Armin. Now, they've shown us that there is a character, actually quite a substantial character, an important character to Eren, especially Armin, who is finally thinking, right? Thinking of that possibility, right? That stampede of the Titans. Clearly he's hoping it's not that. But, you could tell the way it's depicted that he's fearing the worst. That it could be heading into that direction. But of course he doesn't, share any of this with Mikasa, any of these concerns. Not yet. And of course, as expected of Armin, he has all the right things to say to Mikasa at that moment in time to, put her at ease, right? Let's ask him after, right? Let's ask him his intentions after. So yeah, let's see if there is an after. During that table scene, or in the conclusion of that table scene, I did feel like this could be one of the last times they actually sit down together or get to talk in this capacity, right? So let's see how it plays out. Oh, I totally forgot to mention, Armin thinks back to the beach, right? Thinks back to Eren's demeanor at that moment in time and the things he had to say, right? I think Armin understands that Eren can't have them associated with him, right? They must remain at odds for others to see as well, right? As he takes this potential final step, right? The step that Tybur announced to the world and set into motion with his declaration in episode 5, right? Of part 1. It's fascinating stuff. Now, there's still a lot that needs to happen before Eldians can even begin to get a chance out there, right? A place out there. Something monumental needs to happen before the perception can even begin to change, right? The rest of the world despises Eldians, right? Even more than Marley. This takes you back to something Udo, the late Udo, mentioned in part 1. That the camps outside of Marley, the camps in other places, are so much more hateful towards Eldians, right? And the conditions are so much harsher for Eldians. And in comparison, Marley is quite tame, right? So it's going to take something that the world simply cannot ignore, right? To lift that perception and deep-seated resentment and concern that Eldia has come back, right? Has come back to take their place, their rightful place. And, I brought up this possibility in part 1, episode 10, right? And it feels like it is exceedingly likely that Eren is going to make himself the ultimate evil, right? The final boss, essentially. And of course, he doesn't want any of his loved ones on his side, right? He needs them to be on the opposite side, on the opposing side, the ones that could potentially help take him down if the time comes. So, that potential I brought up, that they might need to cut down Eren at some point, it feels like it's, quite likely at this point in time. Like I just mentioned, something substantial needs to happen, a dramatic, eye-opening moment for the rest of the world to change their outlook, right? And seeing or finding out that the other Eldians on Paradis, minus the Jaegerists, of course, didn't want this apocalyptic scenario, right? And fought against it, fought against their own. Now that, something that substantial is certainly something that could start to change the perception people have of the Eldians in Paradis. Now, let me move to the great, the iconic, the legendary Isayama-san, right? So the flow of life can move from cause and effect, right? But the flow of creativity can flow from effect to cause. So, in that sense, I have no doubt in my mind that Isayama-san has given great thought and care to the climax of this incredible story, right? I have no reason to believe that he would drop the ball at this point in time, especially given the fact that it's all been built up and assembled so intricately. That being said, yes, I have heard about the divisive nature or reception of the manga ending. And that was another thing that was simply impossible to not hear about, right? Impossible not to hear about this. Now, that being said, it's not at all shocking to me. I wasn't shocked one bit to hear this. Given the diverse and mammoth fan base of Shingeki, right? There is absolutely no chance that any sort of ending was going to be treasured and championed by everyone in this fan base, right? It's simply impossible. And again, I go back to the diverse fan base. Listen, landing a good ending is not easy, right? A lot of major stories have fumbled the climax, right? But again, it is nearly impossible to have an ending that everyone unanimously appreciates, right? It happens, sure, it happens, but it's rare. It's really rare. Some really incredible shows and stories have fumbled their ending, right? And kind of tarnished their legacy a bit in doing so, because of course the ending is just so important to the lasting legacy of any story, right? It can make or break the series entirely, right? Again, I'll give you the Game of Thrones example. I don't think I need to because everyone knows about this, right? Cultural phenomenon for like over a decade. Then the final season happened. Then the ending happened. They fumbled it, right? They botched it. They couldn't land it. And now Game of Thrones is forgotten, right? It is. It just is. And I was one of the biggest Game of Thrones fans, right? And it was tough to see it go down like that, but it did, right? It fumbled the ending, the climax. Let me explore another angle as well, right? Because I've seen it. I've seen it over the years. Sometimes people don't get the ending they envisioned and championed, right? Does that automatically make it a bad ending? But then, of course, there's also the opposite of that, right? Sometimes there is legitimate concerns and criticism, right? And, some people just do not accept it, right? And they'll defend it to the moon and back, right? Because they're so attached to the material, to the story, and they just cannot accept that maybe it is disappointing, right? I've seen that as well. There's people that defend the Game of Thrones ending and the final season altogether. They think it was great, right? So, I'm not saying that happened just for Game of Thrones. I've seen my share of that kind of behavior. I've seen that out there before over the years. So let's see, right? Ultimately, it's rare to land a majestic ending that the audience will treasure for a lifetime, right? It's not an easy feat. But like I mentioned earlier, I have no doubt that Isayama-san has given it great thought and care. His incredible track record allows me to have that confidence in him, right? That he is going to land a solid ending. Listen, not everything has to be an incredible ending, one of the greatest endings of all time. Even a solid ending is, that's good. That's good, you know? Because even a solid ending is difficult to land sometimes. But yeah, knowing about this ending, that it wasn't, unanimously appreciated, the manga ending that is, I am interested in seeing how that divide came to be. And listen, I think Isayama-san is incredible, legendary, iconic. This is one of my favorite stories of all time at this point in time. But I am going to be honest. If I do feel like there are some legitimate concerns, I'm going to voice them, right? Listen, if it ends up being incredible, if it ends up being a solid ending, fantastic. But, if I do have concerns, I'm going to mention them, right? I am going to mention them. So let's see how that plays out. So let's move on from that topic for now. There's plenty of time left before, any endgame or ending discussions need to take place. After part 2, after this part, there's another year or so probably, right, before this potential film can drop. And, that in itself is going to be torture. I mean, like I mentioned in my intro for part 1, for the last episode, it was so difficult to stay spoiler-free. So, there's another challenge ahead of us for anime onlys, right? So I don't know, man. Let's see. Let's deal with that once it gets here. But let's move on to Gabby. And there it is, folks. Young Gabby has broken through. And of course, it's devastating for her, right? It's a soul-wrenching realization for her, much like it was for her cousin Reiner, right? As she stated, I understand Reiner now, right? His attitude and disposition upon return to Liberio. She understands all of that now. Everything has now clicked for Gabby, right? Her cousin's attitude upon return to Liberio, all the things Falco had to say to her right before they boarded. And at this moment in time, she's dealing with the aftermath herself, right? She's in that phase of it, much like Reiner was. And, that moment she hears Sasha's family, still care about her, right? That truly is an eye-opening experience for her, right? That moment for her, that sealed the deal. That really sealed the deal. And before I move on, like I mentioned during the episode, Jean was in a similar situation, right? Visually speaking, he was hiding inside from Titans that are like outside walking by. And not just Jean, it was a reoccurring theme of season 1, right? Scouts and cadets hiding in fear as Titans roam right outside. But circling back to Gabby, of course, the birdcage symbolism is hard to miss. So I thought that was great. So at this point, we've seen Gabby go through the progression, right? This evolution. Seen her get shaken up as she was kicked out of her normal world, right? Watched her desperate reactions as she tried to regain her footing. Saw her revelation and then the subsequent transition away from the lie and towards the truth, right? That whole progression has now played out. So yes, at this point in time, she has freed her soul from the oppression of the lie, right? But right now, it's not much of a consolation, right? For a moment, you could see that she might find herself lost to the misery for the next little bit, right? But the story immediately gave her the choice between surrendering to that pain and guilt or rising to the occasion and continue the fight. And that came in the form of Falco. And once again, I go back to the season 2 finale for a parallel. Falco ends up putting it all out there and making sure it's said, right? As he expects to move on and turn into a Titan at any moment, really, right? Who knows? It's a ticking time bomb. And you see that the conversation him and Niall had in the jail cell, it certainly resonated, didn't it, right? It was a sad moment, man, because Niall's a family man, you're right? Marie and the kids and Commander Smith knew about this, right? Family played an important role for Niall. It played a big part in season 3, part 1, right? So yeah, it's a sad moment. It's a sad moment, but Falco took something from that conversation, right? From Niall. You see that Niall hoped to say so much to his daughters, and he knows it's never going to happen. And Falco's there for that moment. He's taking it all in, right? So Falco made sure to utilize his potential final moment because he had the chance that Niall doesn't, right? So he made sure to use it. And of course, much like Eren jumped right into action as Mikasa said all that to him in the season 2 finale, Gabby also jumped right into action. And of course, I mentioned the birdcage or the open birdcage symbolism applying to many other things. Another one being Falco finally getting this out there, right? Letting it all out there. Not just his feelings towards Gabby, but also that, unfortunately, he did not realize that this, soldier was Eren Yeager back in Liberio. So he got that out there in the open as well. He was carrying that for some time. That guilt, even though, it's not his fault at all. There's no chance he could have known anything like that, right? But he was still carrying the guilt of it. You see that he blames himself for Udo and Sophia's death even, right? Or that he certainly played a part in it. And of course, the birdcage symbolism goes even further than that, right? You can even apply it to Eldians, that Eldians are finally, breaking loose, that they're finally out there in the world, trying to make a place for themselves, right? They've left the birdcage. But, circling back to Gabby's arc, her positive change arc, at this point of the character arc, it's usually crucial to depict how far the character has come. Now, even though Gabby might be currently feeling that she hasn't made any progress at all, indeed she has made tremendous progress. Because at this moment in time, she is miles from the person she used to be, right? At the beginning of her normal world. It's been dramatically proven through her thoughts and actions in this episode, right? And one of the most effective methods to do this is to create an instance in which the character can reject the lie in a physical manner. And it's set up beautifully, right? As she steps in to avoid a high-stakes situation with Colt being ready to fire at who he wholeheartedly believes to be the enemy with his brother. Because that could have been a really bad situation, right? And it simply had to be Gabby. Gabby simply had to step in there. And I believe it's going to be dramatically proven again in the climax as well, right? This isn't the end of her arc just yet, right? It's almost there. The climax of the arc is usually, where the character proves through their actions that they are a changed person. Yes, she stepped in, and stopped Colt, but, I think there's still more to this arc. Now, usually it's a scene that forces the character to face the main conflict in a decisive confrontation, right? Now, you could argue that, this moment of stopping Colt from possibly killing Niall could be that decisive moment, right? But I feel that there is some setup here for further decisive moments. There's a clear setup, with the anti-Titan rifle, right? And of course, as all of us know, Gabby is a damn good shot, right? So that setup is kind of unmissable. But I think this time she'll be making a crucial shot to save someone, right? To help someone, rather. And then, beyond that, there is also set up for a potentially incredible scene, right? Gabby getting to face Sasha's family as a changed individual, right? Getting to face Kaya as a changed individual. And you see how devastated Gabby is that her actions caused Kaya to also go down the same path, right? The cycle of hatred, right? Hate breeds hate, retaliation breeds retaliation, right? She's just really upset about all of this, that she caused this, right? The same mistakes over and over again. So yeah, it's almost complete, but the setup for the resolution of her character arc is there, I think. Providing an answer to the thematic question that was raised in the beginning of the arc, right? And through Gabby's fantastic character arc, you could see some of the core elements of Shingeki on display, right? As I just mentioned. So, let me move on to Yelena, this agent of chaos. She really is such a fascinating late addition to this story, much like Gabby is, right? She's so unpredictable and quite deceptive in her disposition. And that, of course, makes her quite dangerous, right? She's actually really dangerous. I mean, that's been clear for some time now, right? She's also a bit of a master manipulator. And from the looks of it, she's able to see through or, pick up on other master manipulators as well. Yet she also possesses the capacity to be quite deluded and unhinged, right? There's quite a memorable moment as Armin kind of slipped up in front of her, didn't he? And she picked up on this instantly. Essentially, she knows Armin was kind of faking his reaction, faking that he was going along or he was all for this, beautiful plan of theirs. It's really possible that she even saw through it back then, but she kind of just kept it to herself. Like I mentioned, sometimes she, she knows more than she lets on. But, here it was clear that she caught on and that Armin slipped up here. Her reaction is nightmare fuel, right? And, the reaction of the other scouts tells quite a story as well, right? And then, of course, the jarring change up almost instantly in her demeanor is even more unsettling, right? So, like I mentioned, she is capable of being deranged, deluded, unhinged. I spoke of iconic imagery. That shot of her taking in the destruction of the Marley airships, that certainly felt like an iconic image to me, right? She certainly had the front row seats that she wanted for this, right? She saw her god in full force, right? In all his glory. But then she also looked on in horror as mere mortals took down her god. And, speaking of gods and devils, on the flip side, Flock has established Eren as the necessary devil they need, right? The devil of Paradis. He mentioned this in part 1. And the thing is, Flock is pretty much spot on about that, isn't he? Because I think it's pretty clear at this point, right? That Eren does intend to be the devil of Paradis, right? Right till the end. So I love the yin and yang nature of how the Jaeger brothers are perceived. And I don't think I've seen the last of this type of symbolism either, right? The devil of Paradis and this savior type figure in Zeke, right? So let's see how that plays out. And speaking of Zeke, once Heicho isn't around, the prospect of fighting the Beast Titan, especially at that elevated position, is a daunting one, right? It took some clever thinking by Peak to get a chance at him, right? They couldn't quite land the kill shot, but they got him. The sneak attack, right? And it was the smoke screen, essentially, similar to how Commander Smith kind of helped take down the Beast Titan, right? In Season 3, Part 2. Or, his strategy, essentially, helped take him down. But once again, if Heicho isn't around, the Beast Titan is a totally different proposition. This is a scary thought for everyone that's on the opposing end of the Beast Titan's projectiles, right? And again, a lot of parallels. You have the Beast Titan, once again, just launching projectiles, right, in Shiganshina, but this time at the Marley soldiers, right, or the Marley side. And then you have Flock, who was at the receiving end of these projectiles, but now he is fighting for, or, alongside this individual, right? And how about the voice acting for the Beast Titan? I've loved that voice acting since the first time he spoke in Season 2, Episode 1. And of course, the iconic Beast Titan theme. It's an unforgettable one. And of course, that also goes into, or the same theme also is part of the incredible charge, Commander Smith's charge. And of course, in this one, you see Flock leading a crew of his own, right? Accompanied by the same music. So, a lot of great parallels here. But again, like I mentioned in episode 1, or sorry, the last episode, episode 17, yeah, Heicho was taken out of this situation. He had to be removed, essentially. Because again, it's a totally different prospect if Heicho is out there doing his thing, swinging around. Again, the moment Heicho isn't around, the Beast Titan becomes quite a different proposition, quite a scary proposition. So yeah, I think that's about it. I think that's about it for this one. So if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping comments, give me your thoughts, as long as they are spoiler-free, of course. Thank you. Also, a reminder that profile pics also count as spoilers. Because, in the past, it's been clear that a lot of people like using, screenshots or frames from episodes, recent episodes. And of course, I'm a bit behind. So if your profile pic does have a spoiler in it, that message is going to be deleted, right? Even if the message itself or the comment itself isn't a spoiler, right? But the profile pic might be. Again, I'm not saying you have to change your profile pic. You can have any profile pic you want, but I am saying that in this comment section, it is probably going to be deleted, right? If it does have a spoiler. If you're interested in full length for this episode or any of the past episodes of Shingeki, or maybe even full opacity for this episode, consider checking out the Patreon page. There's many perks for many of the other series on the channel as well. Consider checking out the links to social media, Twitter specifically. I'm quite active there, or I try to be at least. And yeah, you can support the channel just by following the Twitter account, right? You can support the channel by dropping a comment or dropping a like, That's more than enough, right? Not everyone has to be a patron, but that option is there for you. Okay, so that's it for this episode of Shingeki. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for your time. And I do hope to see you again for the next one. So until then, take it easy.